All right, good afternoon, everyone. Now we're going to talk about the 12th bracha of Shemoneh Esrei, and that is Bרכת Haminim, the bracha of the heretics. So it's pretty clear what we're davening for in this bracha, but the question is, what are we asking for when we daven for the destruction of the wicked? What are we really asking Hashem for? So that we know the Gemara in Brachas addresses the destruction of the wicked, and it says the story that there were some people who were starting up with Reb Meir in Reb Meir's neighborhood, and he was getting very upset at them, and he started davening that they should die. So Broria, his wife, said to him, what are you doing? Why are you davening that they should die? The pasuk says, "Yitamu chatayim min haaretz," that the sins should disappear. So don't daven that. It doesn't say that the sinners should disappear. It says that the sins should disappear. So just daven for them to do teshuva, and then Rishayim oideinam. Then there won't be any more Rishayim. So Rameir did that. He davened for them to do teshuva, and the Taka did teshuva. And so we see from here the Chacham we're absolutely opposed. We're opposed to davening for the destruction of wicked. But here in Shemoneh Esrei, we're asking for the destruction of evildoers. So, or in the minim, why? What's going on here? So we have to understand this. So this Bרכת Haminim, it has a unique status in the Shemoneh Esrei. It's essentially the 19th bracha of the 18 brachas. The Gemara explains. Reb Gamliel says that every day everyone has to daven 18 brachas, and then these 18, fact the Gemara, are really 19. So Reb Levi says that the bracha of the minim was instituted in Yavne. Rashi says at a later date. And Shimon Hapakuli said the 18 brachas before Shemoneh Esrei in the right order in Yavne. Rabbi Gamliel said to the Chacham, no one knows the Bרכת Haminim, and Shmuel HaKatan, let's remember that name, Shmuel HaKatan, he got up and he instituted it. He instituted this 19th bracha, and the next year he forgot it, and then he tried to remember it again. He couldn't even remember it for 2 or 3 hours, but eventually he ended up remembering it. So this, we see that the bracha for the heretics with its formulation, it's a problem. It wasn't just in our generation that we're discussing now, but from the very beginning it was a problem. Even Shmuel HaKatan, who was the author of the bracha itself, even he couldn't bring himself to say the bracha again. He couldn't remember it. I think it means that he couldn't bring himself to say it because it's an idea that's so foreign to us, to daven for the destruction of someone else. So there's a fundamental difficulty with the essence of this bracha. So let's try to understand what's going on. There's all kinds of lashinus of destruction in the bracha. Sa'aker, shaber, samager, sachnia, all these things. It's very foreign for us to use these kinds of lashinus. And besides for that, we have to remember that we're in Shemoneh Esrei here. We're asking for the basic needs of mankind. So is this really a basic need? The destruction of the wicked people, is that a basic need that we have? So let's try to understand this. What are we talking about here? So in the original version of the bracha, it said Malchus Zadoin, not V'hazedim, it said Malchus Zadoin. What is Malchus Zadoin? So in the Lashon of the Chacham, the Malchus Zadoin is talking about the Roman Empire. It was just later taken out by the censors because they couldn't say it. The government wouldn't allow it. But the Malchus Zadoin, which is the Roman Empire, really, when the Chacham refer to it, it's the fourth kingdom, which is the kingdom of our Galus. And that's the Galus that continues to this day. So when we say the phrase, it's not talking about an individual sinner. It's not talking about an individual person who sinned, or even to personal enemies. It's talking about to the Malchus Zadoin, the kingdom of evil. It's a representation of the wickedness in the world. It's similar to what we say about Amalek, like every generation there's a war with Amalek. The idea is to uproot evil from the world, not necessarily evildoers. It's to uproot evil from the world in general. And this now in the Shemoneh Esrei, we're not davening for salvation from a particular issue that's dealing with us. In this section of Shemoneh Esrei, in this section of brachas, we're talking about the fulfillment of the promise of redemption. It's a progression. We're going to say it's a progression of the redemption, and this is part of it. Part of it is removing evil from the entire world. So victory in this war is a basic need of mankind. It's just an interesting point. Perhaps it's Shmuel HaKatan specifically who has to have this bracha, because Shmuel HaKatan is also the one who says, "Ben faleivecha al tismach," don't rejoice in the fall of your enemies. And it has to be that characteristic which makes him qualified to make this bracha, because Shmuel HaKatan was called upon to make this bracha because he understood it's not a personal thing. We're not davening for a personal vendetta against an individual, that a certain individual should be destroyed. It's not a personal thing. We would never say that. That's not our style. But it's a general bracha to the Rabbeinu Shalom, telling the Rabbeinu Shalom to uproot evil from the world. So what should we have in mind when we're saying this bracha? I think that it has nothing to do with any individual person or any individual Jew. It has to do with that we are davening to Hashem, that we want the evil to go away and the opposition to the Rabbeinu Shalom to go away, and we need the commitment of the forces of good and to the kingdom of the Rabbeinu Shalom to be Mekoyim, and that is what we should have in mind when we daven this bracha.